I might have just missed this in your presentation, but what is the relationship between Sam Owens, or the AG, and the perpetrators, the original perpetrators? Is it just that they're all Georgia officials?
Well, here's how it works. There's a systemic problem, structural problem with the way the Attorney General's office is set up, regardless of who's the Attorney General. The Attorney General is supposed to investigate and prosecute crimes in state government. So if somebody says $9 million is missing, there's been fraud, the financials have been falsified, it's the Attorney General's job to go and investigate and prosecute that. It is also the Attorney General's job to represent the Board of Regents in the University System of Georgia. So so they're supposed to represent them, they're also supposed to investigate and prosecute them. They don't do the investigate and prosecute, they do represent, they do defend. So the Attorney General's office has defended against my cases. The Attorney General's office has not investigated and prosecuted the crimes. The first case that came up at the University of Georgia, the way the whole tenure revocation came about was that Mike Adams was violating university policy to retaliate against this professor who was criticizing the president. And they were violating University of Georgia and Board of Regents policy in retaliating against this professor. He had study abroad programs. They were denying credit for it, even though it was UGA curriculum taught by a University of Georgia professor at a university, foreign university, with which Georgia had what's called a cooperative agreement, which means that Georgia has to accept the transfer credits from that university. Well, they're denying the credits, violating university policy. Also, by the way, later on, it was that cooperative agreement was one of the records that disappeared, and they claimed it didn't exist, and there really was no cooperative agreement, but it did exist, and we found it and said, oh, is this the cooperative agreement that you denied the existence of with your signature on it? Please, thank you. That was that's the way the court hearing went. So I wrote to the Board of Regents and said, Mike Adams is inappropriately violating university and university system policy by retaliating against this professor. You need to investigate it. I get a response from the Attorney General's office. They call me up and say, we have approved a tenure revocation action against your professor on behalf of the people you asked us to investigate. So they did not investigate the people for violating the policy. The people violating the policy said this professor is a bad apple, bad egg, whatever, and we want to revoke his tenure. So the Attorney General says, okay. So and this has spanned, to be fair, several different Attorney Generals. That actually started under Thurber Baker. I wrote Thurber Baker a letter, because I'm just a stupid copyright attorney. I don't know any better. I wrote him a letter and said, how could this be that I asked you to investigate Mike Adams and you don't investigate Mike Adams? Instead, at Mike Adams' request, you instituted tenure revocation action against the professor who he was retaliating against and who asked you to investigate. And Thurber Baker wrote me back a very nice letter and said, well, we represent the University of Georgia, and they're our client, and we have to do what they say. And that, I think there's a very serious problem with that, and that is a tenet of legal ethics. If I represent you as your attorney, at the end of the day, you call the shots in your case. I have to do what you say, unless I'm helping you to commit a crime. I can't do that ethically. So the Attorney General's office has taken that basic premise of legal ethics and completely distorting it and saying, we have to do what the Board of Regents tells us to because they're our client. What they leave out is, one, I would argue that the Attorney General's office has to have something higher to answer to than just an ambulance chasing attorney. I have to do what my client says. That the Attorney General's office is the top legal office, law enforcement office in the state, and that they have a duty to say, wait a minute, our client may want to do this, but this is wrong and illegal. And also, that also follows the legal ethics rule that you cannot, aid and abet your, client to, continue perpetrating a crime.